I understand that Jenna wanted to talk primarily about the J-Rod, this extraterrestrial being who is housed at Area 51S4 for over 50 years. What most people don't know, they know about Area 51, but they don't know about S4. S4 is about 15 miles south of Area 51 proper. Area 51 proper is a part of the Nellis Air Base. That's where I have all the secret testing of exotic aircraft. But they take all the really hot stuff 15 miles southwest under Papoose Mountain, called Area 51S4. It's 5 different levels underground. There's elevators that take you down to those various levels. There are Navy SEALs guards that guard every level. If you're in any part of that configuration, there will be a guard with an automatic weapon watching you. So that shows you how important the Department of Defense and the secret government feel that this facility is. For some unknown but partly known reason, I'm the one that's been allowed 3D drawings of the most secret part of the most secret base in the world. So I have some of those drawings up on my site. It's rotating on the home page right now. And I have extensive information in the DVDs that describe this area. On level 5, the lowest level, I call it a ambassadorial suite. It's sort of like an alien embassy, because the J-Rod, they derogatorily called him the ambassador, and they made fun of him. They called him funny names like Bright-Eyed and Stumpy, and they wouldn't allow him to wear clothing. So we have a military that is interrogating a being from another star system, the Zeta Reticuli star system, and they're basically torturing him to get information. And Dr. Dan Burrish was trying to help the J-Rod as a microbiologist from the Department of Defense in the 90s to repair a genetic default called neuropathy. And this is a very painful disease. Dr. Burrish would take nerve tissue samples from the upper appendage of the J-Rod. You can see some of those images on my site right now as it rotates. And then he would send that genetic information in a concealed container to the helper biologists in the level above. And they would genetically manipulate that genome and send it back down to Dr. Dan Burrish or other microbiologists through the years. And he would reinsert it into the J-Rod to try and alleviate this neuropathy disease. And that brings us to one of the reasons that I've discovered why the ET people are coming to planet Earth. What my research has shown is that the genetic makeup of Earth people right now is flowering, but it becomes degenerative very soon. So this time frame is very important to the off-world people in order to help their race. Some of their races are dying because of over-cloning and hybridization and so forth. So one of the reasons they're coming here, we're like a pharmacy where they're taking tissue samples from humans, from cattle mutilations, and reinserting them into their genome. And Dr. Dan Burrish, who I've interviewed for 100 hours on camera, 100 hours off camera, very close to his family. I've written 2 books, one with his parents, and I was best man at his wedding. So I know the story better than anyone else on the planet. And to actually know someone so well and not be a family member is quite unusual. So I feel honored and very pleased that I have this information. And the secret government wants this out. I know everybody thinks, well, they can just tell Obama or Secretary of Defense to come forward, but that's not the way that the ET people have signed treaties with our government. It has to come from the grassroots. That's why I'm involved with the Citizens Hearings on Disclosure, which those DVDs will be going out in the next couple of weeks to every member of Congress. So that's an important thing we need to talk about at some time. But
How did Dan Burry solve J-Rod? What's his background that he was selected to work with J-Rod?
Dr. Dan Burry was taken on board a ship. He was abducted in Lakewood, California when he was 9 years old. He was taken on board the ship, and the J-Rod, or some personage of the J-Rod, was on board the ship. And the J-Rod knew that this young boy, 28 years later, would be interacting with him. Because what most people don't understand is when they see these UFOs flying around, they're actually flying time machines. So these beings are accessing different timelines. So Dr. Dan Burrish at May Boyer Park, I drive by that park about once a month. It gives me a really interesting point of view because I drive by that tree where he was abducted, taken on board the ship when he was 9 years old. He was enhanced at that time. That's another part of the UFO story that a lot of people don't understand, is that these beings can take humans aboard their ships and enhance their IQs, their ability to understand things. Usually it starts in childhood. If your listeners have interacted with other abductees and contactees, it started when they were children. That's a whole other story. So Dr. Dan Burridge was taken on board the ship, and he was playing ball with his grandfather at Bay Boyer Park in Lakewood, and he was late for dinner, so his mother came and saw her father-in-law and her son just sort of standing. Danny was standing looking at the sky, mumbling something about a black kite, because that's what this was that these people gave him. And grandfather was just turned off, sitting under a tree. So his mother, Doreen, we call her Dodie, woke everybody up. She didn't know what happened at that time, and brought her family back to their home, which was about a block or a block and a half away. So when he was taken on board, he was enhanced for a special mission that he was to take up. And at that time, when 9-year-old was a normal kid, he was playing with G.I. Joes and so forth. But he had, after he was abducted, he had a special interest in microscopy. He asked his parents for a microscope, and they got him like a Tosco child's microscope, which didn't work very well. And he played with that. In fact, he tried to take a telescope and marry it to the microscope, but that didn't work. So his mother, Doreen, called Long Beach Memorial Hospital and said that her son was very interested in science. Who could they recommend to be a mentor to her son? And fortunately, the receptionist referred her to Dr. Reynolds. Dr. Reynolds was the leading pathologist in the world. And so Doreen took her 9-10-year-old son over to Long Beach Memorial Hospital. All of this information is in my DVDs. Everything I say, ladies, is corroborated by other people. I'm not just talking off the top of my hat. As an investigative journalist, I need at least 2 and preferably 3 other corroborating witnesses on anything I say. So anything I say in this interview has been corroborated, and you can write down anything I say and Google it. Google is like God. It knows everything. So Doreen took her son to Long Beach Memorial Hospital, and fortunately, this wonderful man, Dr. James Reynolds, took Dr., at that time, young Danny Crane. I'll mention about the name change. His name at birth was Crane, Danny Crane. When he married this woman, Doreen, not Doreen, forgotten her first name. Anyway, her last name was Burrish. In 92, he changed his name to her maiden name, Burrish, to not upset the child that she had by another relationship. So he's a very considerate person. He told me when he was working in the lab, just to show you, working with mice and so forth, part of the protocol was when they were doing the experiments with the mice, they would cut off their toes and they would bleed. So Dr. Burrish Crane, being a sensitive person, he would smuggle the mice out in his briefcase and take them home and take them to the shelter. He didn't want them harmed. That just shows you his mental and conscientious way of dealing with animals and humans as far as that goes. So for 4 or 5 years,
he's still alive. What's going on with Dan? Is he okay?
Well, I don't understand the question.
I said, is Dan still alive? Is he okay? You know, he came out with all this stuff.
Yeah, he's okay. Yeah, he was 50 years old, February of this year.
Oh, he's a relatively young man.
Yeah. His
oh, good. And you've had contact with him recently in the past year or so, or?
Through his website and family and so forth. Yeah, I just stated I've interviewed him for 100 hours on camera, and 100 hours off camera. And I know the family. I haven't interacted with him so much the last few years because he's been on a scientific mission. He gave a presentation in Caltech in 2008, which was called the Ganesh particle. It's a God particle. And that was such an impressive event in 2008 that their videographer, and I have that video. I haven't put it up on my website. Probably put it up this week. But the people at Caltech were so impressed with his presentation that they were actually considering giving him Einstein's old office. Dr. Burrish's IQ is 200. Einstein was like 178 or something.
160.
So, it didn't happen. He didn't get the office, but he lives in Las Vegas with his new wife, Marcia. And if you go to Breaking News, you'll see, you go on my website, Dan Burrish endorsements, and you'll see the major UFO researchers on planet Earth confirming that Dan Burrish is the real deal. Because I've talked to other experienced UFO researchers, and they just can't accept this story. They go, this can't be. The guy's crazy. He's lying. But that's because they don't know anything about the story. All I hear is that there's this being in captivity, Area 51, S4, and microbiologists taking tissue samples, but they have nothing to compare it to. So that's part of my job, is to make this story understood. So in my other website, area51jrod.com, I have 41 documents showing Dr. Dan Burrish's PhD, letters from the university where he was in the top classes and everything about him. I had 95, but I cut it down to 41. So I have all of the credentials. So anybody that wants to challenge the Dr. Dan Burrish story, they have to challenge his academic acumen first. I'll put him up. He can bring any of the best microbiologists on planet Earth. I'll put Dr. Dan Burrish Crane up against them in his knowledge of microbiology, and he will be a star performer. He knows his stuff. The government trained him in the special school so that he could have the knowledge, so that when he would take tissues out of the extraterrestrial person, codenamed J-Rod, his actual name was Kealah, Cealah. On my website, area51jrod.com, is my story of treatment of saving Kealah. All of those things on that website are downloadable, no charge. So why people ask me, why do I have all this information? And I don't have an exact answer for that. It has to do with my military service. It has to do with former incarnations. It has to do with my integrity and my honesty, and no holds barred description of the events in my life. So the secret government has chosen Dr. Dan Burrish as a poster boy for disclosure. I know TJ is skeptical of that, but that's okay because she doesn't know all the information. So I'm trying to give the information. The website has a lot of it, but I will be posting more. I produced over 40 videos. I have, 12 or 13 up there now. And that if your audience is not able to purchase these, if they just watch the trailers, they'll get a major education in this field. My site is unique in the whole Internet. And it's unique because the secret government has given me permission and the mission to tell this story. In 2005, Dr. Dan Burish was installed as number 9 of the Majestic 12. I'm assuming your audience knows Janet and TJ Day. Are they familiar with who MJ-12 is?
We can't speak for them that's listening, but because we don't know who they are. But people that know us, thousands that do know us.
They all are. I can name them.
Yeah.
But just briefly.
Okay.
MJ-12.
You want to give a little back? What is MJ-12?
I'll give you a background. In 1907, there was a crash of a UFO in Roswell, New Mexico. And President Truman was president at that time. And I'd like to have your audience focus in on the time frame. This is 1947. And we had just come out of World War II, just dropped the atomic bomb 2 years earlier. So we were king of the world. The United States was head and shoulders above everybody else. We had atomic weapons. Then here comes 2 years later, in 1947, the crash of a UFO, which some people in the government knew about it. I don't think Truman knew about it at that time. And the paper, the Roswell paper, announced Army captures UFO. Big headlines. You can, anything I say, you can just Google it. You can see the headline. But what happened from my research is that they sent planes out over that crash site, and they saw a body. They saw beings. Once they saw a being, the Army military said, shut this down. So Mike Brazel, who was the rancher who had all the debris, took it in and showed it to Sheriff Wilcox in Roswell, New Mexico, and they took him and isolated him in a secret place and said that and they told him to tell the world it was a weather balloon. And bless his heart, Brazel would not do that. He wouldn't lie. All the way through this story, you have government black ops people trying to force the average person to lie. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. So Mike Brazel, finally they bribed him. They gave him brand new trucks. So he was driving around Roswell in a brand new pickup. So, and he wouldn't talk about it. So here you have President Truman in the White House getting information about this crashed UFO in Roswell, New Mexico, July 6, 1947. So what does the president do? He does what all presidents do. They organize a commission of people to investigate. Anything happens in Washington, we're getting a committee. So he had 6 military people and 6 scientific people, and they were inaugurated on September the 27th, 1947, called the Majestic 12. All you have to do is Google Majestic 12, and you'll find out all about it. So that group is a group that has controlled this information. The Navy has control. I was in the Navy, so maybe that's some reason why I've been chosen to have this mission. The other researcher that I worked with was Bill Hamilton, and we worked together on Area 51. We could talk more about that. But he was there for us. I don't know if it was something when his dossier did. Anyway, he was moved out of the story a few years ago. Great person, wonderful researcher. But I've been pushed to the forward from the secret government. I had a special courier from Las Vegas come to my apartment in Huntington Beach in 2007 to get copies of my master tapes because Admiral McConnell, who is head of Majestic 12, wanted this information out sooner. So I tried to explain to the courier, editing is very expensive. It's from $85 to $150 an hour. And I was working on a limited budget. I worked, for 30 years on this subject and got hundreds of thousands of dollars into it. So Dan Burrison took some of those videos and put them on his website. His website is eaglesdisobey.com. He has a disclaimer up there right now. After all these years, he has some of my videos that he was selling. I don't know if he still is or not. But he's going what they call silent running. He has all the scientific information that was downloaded into him by this person from another star system. So he's writing a book about the Ganesh particle and the presentation at Caltech. And as I'm talking, I realize that I need to put that DVD up there. It's amazing. But if you go to my site, Dr. Dan Burrish Endorsements, there are people who were at that presentation, and they will tell you on my video right now that presentation was the most jaw-dropping information scientifically that they've ever seen. Dr. Roger Lear, Dr. J.J. Hurtak, a double PhD, they're all right now. You can go on my site. And that's
I went over there. It looks good. Yeah.
Endorsement.
Dr. Dan Burrish endorsement. Right. Got it.
Right.
On your website.
So I put those up there because of the UFO skeptic, people that are in, the average person is skeptical of everything, and I'm skeptical too. I don't buy these things. I've got to prove it. And I've hired 3 private investigators, the best in the world. I've traveled to 6 countries. I've got over $200,000 into all this. I have my own personal bodyguard. This is serious business with me, ladies and gentlemen. This is not a lark. So many people, when you hear, UFOs, it's some kind of tabloid thing, and President Clinton talked to the ETs, blah, blah, blah. And that's disinformation by the Black Ops. They are really skilled at disinformation, as I'm sure you know. They have PhDs, double PhDs in disinformation, which is 80% true, 20% false, which throws everybody off. But my information, my story is right on the money. If you go to my other website, Area 51, jrod.com, the Q94 document, it's 5 pages of the description by Dr. Dan Burrish of the genome of an extraterrestrial. Nobody has that. It's there. You can download it. You can take it to other scientists. You can take it to whoever. I've taken it to scientists, and it seems like gobbledygook to them. What do they know about the genome of an extraterrestrial? But I'm sure there's some people out there that have had some experience and will recognize the truth of that document.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Okay, wanted to know if the J-Rod species, speaking of genome, is the same as the Roswell alien. Are they the same species? What is the planet of origin, or is there a planet of origin for Errol, the Roswell Gray, and J-Rod?
I'm not sure the Roswell
alien, the Serpo Grays.
Don't know for sure. What I've gotten from my research from the CIA archives is, and most people in ufology don't know this, but according to my research, many of these we're coming near are from Aldebaran. You need to check out Aldebaran. But the J-Rod that Dr. Dan Burrish worked with for several years was from the Zeta Reticuli star system. And the J-Rod showed Dr. Dan Burrish through mental telepathy, all of it was through telepathy, what his planet was like. It was very hot. And that's one of the reasons they enjoyed coming to Earth, because of the water. The J-Rod people, I'll give you a little background of them. The J-Rod stood about 3.5 feet tall, 2 arms, 2 legs, torso, larger head, because and a much more expanded brain. And that was one of the problems that the military was concerned about. The power, they're concerned about it with the J-Rod, but they're concerned about it with all the ET people, because they have such powerful brains that they can overcome any human brain. Human use about 10%. I think the ET people use over 50 or 60%. So Also on my site, I have drawings of the genitalia of an extraterrestrial. Nobody has that. Dr. Dan Burrish explained that the male genitalia was like a disc. There's drawings on it. The female genitalia for copulation was inserted as like a camera lens. I picture like a camera lens when they marry to each other. They have internal fertilization. They defecate like we do. They are dehydrating all the time. So the J-Rod, all the time he was sipping liquid because he had to keep himself hydrated. They, on their planet, they have arranged marriages. They don't have a lot of emotion, although they have some. The marriages are arranged, and they're very intellectual. They're very tuned into numerology. That's a whole other story. But they're coming here. I liken it to, say, a Caribbean cruise. We had people from China, Russia, Japan, Uruguay, Chile, Mozambique, wherever, and they're all on this cruise ship in the Caribbean. So when they come to the Caribbean islands and they see all these beautiful islands and beaches and everything, it's all exciting. But everybody on board that ship brings their culture with them. So they see it through Chinese eyes or Russian eyes or French eyes or American eyes or South American or Latin American. They see this planet as relates to their planet. So all these different beings, I only know of 4 for sure, but I think there's probably 50 or 60 or maybe more, I don't know, that are coming here. And all of them come here with their own cultures as a part of their life. So they are harvesting, material from cattle mutilations because the genome of cattle is very similar to humans. So they're trying to repair the damage, not to completely change their genome, but to sort of as a Band-Aid, trying to help their culture from becoming extinct. And there are
Where did that information? Where did that come from? Is that part of Dan Burrish's information? Because I just interviewed this fellow yesterday, Christopher O'Brien, and he thinks that all cattle mutilations are human origin. And of course, I didn't have you or someone else as an expert to counteract that argument, and so we just kind of let him tell a story. But where does that information come as to why they are taking the cattle?
Linda Moulton Howe. That's all you need to know. She's an expert on cattle mutilation. Okay?
All right.
And
they're going to have a debate, yes, at this, is it Starworks? There's 2 conferences coming up in November. So one of those conferences, Miss Christopher O'Brien and Linda Moulton Howe are going to debate the cattle mutilation. So that'll be pretty interesting. But, so TJ had a lot of experiences at with the Roswell craft, and her husband as well. TJ, would you like to ask any questions on what we covered so far about J-Rod and Arrow and
the only thing I know about that, Janet, is I'm more familiar with that which we were part of, first-hand information, but that was in 47 Roswell, and that's a different location. That's Los Alamos and in the mountains where my uncle worked and where Tom and I have gone from time to time, but different location. I am familiar with all that because coming and going from there, but I believe he's speaking about 1953, and as far as I know, that's the same story that Harry Drew became familiar with Kingman, some flybys or set-downs. But I haven't followed the J-Rod story that he's speaking of, Janet, at all. So I'm learning from him. I'm learning, that's...
All right.
I don't have any data any more than anybody else on research and the Internet.
Okay, let me just ask you a question, TJ. What were your beings that you interacted the Errol-type Roswell Greys, or were they the J-Rod extraterrestrials?
I don't know what the J-Rod rays, like I just said. I can't speak firsthand, Janet, on what I don't know. All I know is what I see on the Internet about J-Rod or any of that. I have no information to share on that. So, I mean, I can say that I understand there's various types of Greys, and in my intel that I discovered firsthand is that there's various factions, and they are supposed to work with the Allied Command and the Greater High Council, or whatever you want to call the various levels, depending on how we pronounce in the English language words that we can't possibly even fathom on this planet because we can't, we don't use them. And everything that came from the Greys I was involved with was extrasensory perception. But see, my frame is in this lifetime, and I wasn't working with Dan Burrish or these J-Rod things or extraterrestrials or Greys. I think that on the human planet here where we live, that most of us are agreeing. This is my understanding, Ron, and you can correct me, but it's my understanding that we do all agree that there is various types of beings that we all call Greys, and we're all starting to compare stories from 1947 forward. But Janet, I think it's like apples and oranges. Now, my story is that there is a faction.
My question, TJ, let me just interject here. Okay, so you worked with some Gray beings, and where were you? Were you at Area 51? Were you at what Ron is calling S4? I thought you were at Area 51 at some point.
I've been all over in this lifetime, Janet. I've been in locations, but I didn't work like underground. I worked for the U.S. Navy, and I worked for Department of Defense. I worked DOD and then DON, but my checks came from the U.S. Treasury.
Right. So which beings did you see? Let's just cut to the chase.
Greys and white. Greys and white.
Okay, this Greys that you saw. How tall were they? What color were they? All
They're
that
between
stuff.
3 and 4 feet. 3 to 4 feet, and basically gray. Humanoid, Japanese-like appearances. They wear lens over their eyes because their eyes are high. I don't know what one would call it because I didn't get into it detailed, but I do understand they wear these lens over because they're like in space, and where they come from, they don't deal with light like we do on this planet with the sun. So as far as everything that Ron's sharing for the listening audience, that's his story, or Dan Burrish's, and he's repeating it. I don't think Ron was there. So he has second or third-hand information. Mine is, all I can speak from is personal accounts, and the rest is off of intel from, or just hearsay evidence.
Right.
If you understand. So I can't, Janet, I can't confirm or deny something that Ron's speaking for you because I'm listening, for the second time just like you are. And he keeps referring us to his website, which is fine.
I'm just asking to speak from your experience. That's all any of us can do is speak from our own personal experiences. All right, I want to give Ron back to Ron, the ball back to Ron because we're running out of time. Okay, Ron, what would you like to tell our listeners? Because I think we have about 10 minutes left.
Okay, are you familiar with Michael Wolff's story in the book The Catchers of Heaven?
I am, yes.
Okay, well, that book is really rare. You can't find it. It's $400 or $500. But if you can just go on the internet and the book Catchers of Heaven, and the cover of the book has an actual picture of an E.T. His real name is Kolta, Kolta. And Michael Wolff's story is really a corroborative of the Dan Burrish story. So.
Okay.
Michael Wolff was involved in every aspect of the ET phenomena. The whole umbrella term is a Project Aquarius. that they use that term, the military uses Project Aquarius, for all aspects of the UFO ET phenomena. And that's because these beings that they're mostly interacting with are from the Aquarian part of the sky, according to astrology. So the umbrella term is Aquarius. I have a whole DVD called Aquarius that tells you all about the Area 51 at 4 or 5 different levels. Michael Schratt, he's a 3D artist. He's the one that has done some of the artwork for my website. So Michael Wolf is one of the most important whistleblowers. Dan Burridge is, from my point of view, because I know him personally, I never met Michael Wolf. Richard Boylan did. Paola Harris spent a lot of time with him. But it's a very important story. The book, Catchers of Heaven, is a very difficult read because Michael Wolf was missioned to tell his story to different researchers. On his phone, he had a red button, red light. So when he started to talk about something that wasn't kosher as far as his handlers, the red button would flash. So then he would start sort of mumbling and repeating himself. And that's the way the book is. You have to read between the lines when you. And I read the book, and but there's a lot of information on Michael Wolf on the internet. I downloaded some of it myself. I know Richard Boylan. I helped publish one of his books, so I know his story. And he interacted on the phone. Other people interviewed Michael Wolf. So Michael Wolf's story is corroborated in the Dan Burridge story. So that's how I compare notes.
I have a story related to that, and we don't have time, I think, in this episode to go into it, but I'll just plant a little teaser.
Well, we can have Ron back.
Maybe what? Yeah, we'll have it back, Ron. But what? What do you call it? The being. What did he gave it a soul, but it was actually, what was it? A genetic clone or something? The being that he created, it looked like a human.
Yeah, there's a lot of cloning going on, yeah.
Yeah, well, he created this one that he ensouled, and then he was ordered to destroy it. And then the story is that he set it free. And I think that person came to my house, and I'll just drop that. There's very strong indication. This was years ago. This was like 15 years ago. But I had a very strange 2-part interaction with a being that seemed to have been his being, and I'll just leave that as a teaser for our next show. Because it's just too much detail to go into right now.
So the being looked like that picture on the front of Catchers of Heaven, a being named Colta?
No, I'm talking about his creation. His creation, which I have Catchers of the Heaven. I bought it when it was brand new, so I didn't know it was worth $500. And I have the being, and actually my copy has a little slice in the cover for when somebody opened, I guess, the box where all the books was in. They had one of those paper cutters, right? But I took it because it was like the last copy, and I'm glad I did. It is a very difficult read, and I should pick it up and try to make. I couldn't quite understand what he was saying because it's very cryptic, but now it's 15 years later, whatever it is, I know a lot more. But he said it was a very tall, powerful Nordic, because this was the super soldier they were going to use as the basis to clone and create an army for the military. It was a military operation. Anyway, take it between now and the next show. Let's look at that story again, and I will recount what my interaction was and how this is when I was new with Dr. Lesson. I just moved in the early years, and it was just my life is just very magical like that. Meeting all these people and having these experiences. But I'm not making sense. I don't want to go into the story because we don't have much time right now. Let me see what our time is.
Somebody's asking
what else?
When they come here and they're asking questions in the chat room, Janet. But Dorian Barberi wants to know when are they coming here. But I'm telling her we have ETs here all the time, Doreen. It's just some of us have worked with them and some of us haven't. So, in response to your question, they come and go as they please always have, always will. And I strictly have to speak from firsthand information, but we interview people that have stories. A full disclosure, Doreen, is based on an individual person, Doreen, as far as, I don't know what you mean by full disclosure, because we have 4.7 billion people or thereabouts. Each human being has to have their own encounter. As far as generically speaking, on shows like this, we pretty much agree to speak in English and use terms we all agree upon, like grays, whites, Nordics, government, disclosure. So she's asking, by our government? No, I don't know, Doreen, if our United States government, if you mean the one that was formed that we refer to, the government are the people, by the people, for the people. We are the government. As far as who we put in office, I have no idea if there's anybody in office. Now, Ron Garner is sharing with us that he personally understands in his way of thinking that he has permission from a group called the Majestic 12, which was written about years and disclosed through the history of ufology on the Internet, in books, in films, and Ron here is saying he has permission. Ron, tell her a little bit of this Majestic 12 real quick. We've got 12 minutes before Janet has someone else coming on at the hour. Tell her about your idea of what Majestic 12 is and why you feel they have permission to disclose. Are we not using Area 51 like we used to, and that's why you think they're just going to disclose it since they've moved a lot of stuff out, or because it was strictly for testing, our first aircraft, our S4? They may have some over there. I don't know. I've heard and I've seen a lot of YouTube videos on S4, including Bob Lazar for years, and Linda Moulton Howell talking about the other thing. But, Ron, give her an idea of these people out there about the government and MJ-12. Again, one more time, could you?
Well, it just makes perfect logic. If President Truman, like I was saying earlier, we were king of the mountain with atomic bombs, but then he finds out that there are these beings that he actually, by research, Truman actually met one of these beings. It's another long story, but they could appear and disappear. So President Truman said, how can we fight you? Because you can appear and disappear. And the ET person told Truman, that's true. You can't defeat us. So this panicked the government back in 1947, and that's why you got these 6 people from the scientific community and 6 people from the military community to get together and find out what this story is about. And they continue. It's a huge organization now. They've morphed into another group called the Committee of the Majority, which there's another group of 33 people. I know all the names of all these people. I'm not going to give them one here right now. As Europeans and Americans, and the Blue Bloods and so forth, and the Trilateral and the Bilderbergers, and they're all a part of all that. So this group have these meetings, and I was saying earlier, Dr. Dan Burrish, because he was Admiral McConnell, who was Director of National Intelligence for President Bush. And McConnell is like the Burrish's godfather. He protects. There's a microbiologist and met untimely death. Dr. Burrish is he isn't real healthy, but he's functioning. And that's because Admiral McConnell is protecting him. And prior to in 2005, my car was broken into 3 times. My car was entered. I told Dan Burrish that this was happening to me, and he the order to stand down as far as my car is concerned. So from 2005 on, I had no trouble. And I've had leaked information coming from here and there because there are people in this Majestic 12 organization that want this story out. So when Dan Burrish was number 9 in Majestic 9, that's a very significant number to the ET people, and that's a long story. So he called for a vote in April of 2005. The vote was 6-5 for disclosure. There's always one abstention. It has to do with the protocols of the Freemasons and the Knights Templar. Also, it prevents having a tie. So the vote was 6-5 in April of 2005, and another vote in September, it was 8-3 for disclosure. When these votes were taken, they're never reversed. I'm not sure. I have a suspicion who voted yea and nay, but I don't know for sure. Dan Burge knows for sure because he was part of the organization. But he was a scientist. He didn't want to deal with the politics. So Admiral McConnell allowed him to appoint his successor. And I won't tell you who the successor is, but the successor for this first time in Majestic organization was a woman. So right now, in number 9 in Majestic is a woman. So because Dan Burge is very much a feminist and got a long story about helping people. And this story will come out slow but sure. The Air Force controls so much of this. But you have other intel groups. The Army has intel. The Navy has intel. The Marines have intel. NSA, NRO. All the alphabet soup people have their intelligence. And they don't talk to each other in detail. So right now it's happening on planet Earth, scrambling to get this ET technology and use it for weapons. And I can talk a lot about that. Linda Moulton Howe knows a lot more. And they have self-replicating vehicles. They can make things out of nothing and so forth. So this technology is so powerful and overcomes in the normal technology that's why all these intelligence groups are trying to get it. I use an anecdote from another observer the day after Roswell. I always admonish people, they're just casual, need to read some books. Often when I talk to people, I ask them, have you ever read any book on this subject? And most, oh, no, I don't know. Well, then there's not much to talk about. I'm glad that the two of you have read and studied. So there's some context of what I'm saying. But the average person, they just don't have a context. So in Philip Corso's book, he explains that Trudeau, the general of the Army, head of the Army R&D, gave him all of this hardware from Roswell, computer chips, lasers, night vision goggles. All of that came from the Roswell craft. And General Trudeau told Colonel Corso that without that information, it would be 100 years before he could ever develop all of this technology. So when Trudeau missioned Philip Corso to take this out to Bell Labs and Monsanto and so forth, because all of our corporations were developing these things. One of the major corporations was developed night vision goggles, for night vision, but the night vision device was as big as a tank. So the inner eyelid of the beings from Roswell, they had 2 eyelids, you referenced that, and the reason is when their planet was so bright that they needed 2 eyelids. So the night vision goggles came from the inner eyelid of the extraterrestrial who was at Roswell. So Colonel Corso in his book, I forgot which chapter it's in, he's taken this technology out, and the CIA knows he has information but doesn't know what it is. So they have someone following him around all over the East Coast when he's taking this out to industry, because the Army doesn't want to have patents, they just want weapons. So this CIA person was chasing Philip Corso, and he tried to lose him by going through alleys and so forth. So finally he got fed up, and he went to CIA headquarters and talked to one of the officials with his .45 and laid the .45 on the official's desk and said, either take this guy off my tail or I'm going to blow his head off. That's in the book. But what that anecdote shows is that these intel groups are fighting over this information. And some of them have some, and always have been and always will be, because this is the most important technology, and all of our stealth technology came from the craft, and you go down the list. I also am working on a documentary of Ben Rich. Ben Rich was CEO of Lockheed Skunk Works. He's the one that's created the SR-71. All of this And I have a lecture that he gave at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, and he said, quote, "We now have the technology to take ET home," close quote. Okay.
Right, and Janet and Ron, I'll add to this particular radio show that I had talked to Senator Strom Thurmond, and we did talk about Roswell, and we did talk about prior reverse technology. And then my husband was in the United States Army, but he worked for President Ronald Reagan, George Bush direct. And it was Ronald Reagan that sent my husband my husband had many missions, and not to confuse everybody, because he can tell his own story firsthand, and we have shared many parts, but never just one fluid story. But he did work to go, his assignment after he had like 21 to 28 schools in the U.S. Army, he was a weapons specialist, and he had gone to he has all this gunsmith and all that, but his assignment, according to the Pentagon and from what he tells me, was to find the weapons on the spacecraft that landed in 1947. There were a minimum of 2, from what we have read and ascertained with my husband, and the one that crashed is the one that I follow, the original Jesse Marcel story, and then I follow the Philip Corso story, because he was directly involved with Senator Strom Thurmond, which my name is Thurmond, my maiden name, and Senator Strom Thurmond took a personal interest in me and my family because we were named Thurmond, and he was looking up his ancestry and all that. But because I had been having UFO encounters as a Thurmond, he took an interest in me as a child and as a young adult. So he called me from Washington, D.C., and then he offered me a job in Washington, D.C., which I turned down. But I did wind up going to Washington, D.C., just for the record, and we can get into that later. But it's good for Ron to have this on the show that he came on, so he can, we later. So in a way, I'm sort of endorsing that Ron is doing the best he can to, after 40 years' experience, is collecting information. And, folks, you can go to Area 51. He's got a wonderful, you just tune in. I can see some people just tuning in on the hour. Area 51, jrod.com. And Area51thetruth.com. And this is one of Janet Lesson's finds, and she has also brought us Lawrence R. Spencer in an alien interview, and I also had talked to him, and we've had him on this show, and I've enjoyed his story as well. And I think we're just all putting the pieces together, folks, and comparing the information we're all sharing. And he's done a wonderful job of putting it on his websites to make it a little easier for you. And so I strongly recommend you go and visit his. And we may be doing something in the future with Ron. Okay, go ahead. With Stargate Production.
I have to interrupt because 2 things. I've got to go to a commercial break at the top of the hour here, and also I'm getting a reading that my internet connection is no longer. So I'm going to try to play some music and break. Ron, we'll have you back next week or the following week. I'll contact you via phone, and I got to go take some technical difficulties here so I can bring on our next guest, who probably is in. So I'm just going to say goodbye, Ron. Thank you so much for being on our show again this week. We'll have
Thank you, Ron. Look forward to yes.
And I'm going to go to commercial break, connect and reconnect so I can guest back. That's calling you.
Oh, okay. Janet, just call me back in. I'm just call back when you get that all reconnected.
Just hang there. It
Thank
may
you,
not
Ron.
disconnect. Okay.
Okay, you're welcome.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Ron. Give me a call anytime if you want. We'll discuss all this off air. Thank you, Ron. Good night.
Okay, very good.
Goodbye.
Thank you.
Good night. Okay, folks, she's going to check on that, and we're going to bring somebody else on here. I believe that Janet's going to locate a gentleman from Australia, and we always enjoy Ron. Ron's a good speaker. He's very enthused about his work. He's got over 40 years' experience doing this type of work. We call cosmology, ufology, for those out there in his group. From what I understand, he's done some excellent videography and producing and editorial work with Stargate Productions, which I understand he is presently the owner of, and he's had years of experience with big names, Dr. J.J. Hertog, Michael Schratt, Linda Moulton Howell, Dr. Roger Lear, and who else? Of course, Dr. Dan Burish, Mark McClendish, and David Wilcock, actually. So a lot of people may know one or more of those, and Janet and I are doing our best to present what we can find when we find it. And Janet has a lot of time and interest and passion for locating these people. And while she and I are both running businesses, but she and I are friends and contactees and have compared our own stories in ufology and in metaphysics. And she and I came together over the Ascension Center organization, which she and I both have. Some people call it New Age, woo-woo, and all that stuff, but Janet and I have learned that studying our past gives us a lot of insight into the entire being as body, mind, spirit, sharing the birth, life, death process. So Janet and I just, the typical giggly girl kind of, relationship, but we talk pretty much every day of our lives and have since probably 2007, and close to it. And prior to that, it was quite a few years. So if you want to stay in touch, please feel free. I have tjmorriset.com website. Janet has QuarionRadio.com. We're both on AscensionCenterOrg.com, and Janet has AscensionCenter.net. And we're going to get into some more information here with a gentleman from Australia. And I think Janet's still here. She just got us on hold, and I'm waiting for her on another location to connect to her Australian contact. And he will be on shortly. And I was expecting possibly later Gene Rosebush, retired chief of the United States Army and U.S. Navy, to share some of his information. He is a conspiracy theory follower, I guess one would say, and he was going to share information that he knew. If he could get back, he was out of town, and I sprung this on him at the last minute. But if not, we'll try to have him back later, too. And category, we may change it over to paranormal, being that this is more, I guess, when we're paranormal than spiritual. So I'm going to change our category.
Me.
I hear you. Okay, Janet, are you back?
Okay, I saw our guest in the queue, and I hope he tries to call back. My internet just clicked off, and I had to go reboot the modem. Okay, our guest here. Okay, now let me see if this is indeed our guest. Let's see where my bio is. Here we go. Let me go back to the queue and... Hi, aloha. Is this our guest, Peter?
Yes, can you hear me?
Hello.
Hello?
Yes,
hi, Peter.
Sorry. Hi, Peter. I wanted to
Hey,
do
go,
an intro on you. I had some technical difficulties. For some reason, my modem just kicked me off the internet, so I had to go reboot. But just hold there one moment while I introduce you. Yep. Peter Maxwell, is it Slattery or Slattery? Is an experiencer, author, Slattery, speaker, meditation teacher, and he does energy and healing practices. His experiences started at an early age and continue to this day, and he has witnesses to events and an overwhelming amount of photographic and video evidence of UFOs, orbs, and apparitions. From his experiences with extraterrestrials to interdimensional beings, spirits, and source, all has led Pete to dedicate himself to the healing of the earth and to the awakening of the human race by helping people find their own connection to Source and their own interdimensional self. He also helps people to initiate contact themselves on whatever level they are ready to do so, individually and in a group, through love, good intent, and meditation. We're so excited to have you on today, Peter. Welcome to our show. I'm Janet Carelesson, and my co-host is T.J. Morris, Teresa J. Morris. Is there anything you want to add to your bio that you'd like to tell our listeners before we start asking questions and getting your information?
Not that I can think of at this time, but thank you for having me on the show.
Oh, we're just excited. I saw your interview with my good friend Alfred Lambermont Weber, and I said, I've got to get you, and there I did. I got you. I found you, and you answered, and I really respond.
Hi.
So just to let you know, say hi to each other, TJ and Peter.
Hey, TJ.
Hi, Peter. I'm Teresa J. Morris. I go by TJ Morris, ET Radio, and I'm over in Kentucky and sort of centrally located on the mainland in the United States of America. And Janet and I have been working together for 3 years. This is our third season on the radio, just for your own information. She's in Maui, Hawaii, and I'm in Beaver Dam, Kentucky. So welcome to all our listening audience. And normally we are connected to the UK. That's why we broadcast at this time. What time is it there in Australia, Peter, for you?
It's 9:08 in the morning on a Sunday, so we're a day ahead of you guys.
You are ahead. This Saturday, 5:08 my time, and about noon for Janet. So how about that, folks? You get to hear how we all are on the same planet, just different time zones. He's actually on a different day. He's on Sunday morning, and we're broadcasting from Saturday at 5 in the afternoon on the mainland and in Hawaii noon. So we're rotating. So how about that? Now, Janet found you, Peter, and I really appreciate all that she does. Just so everybody knows, Janet Carelesson of Aquarian Radio in Maui, Hawaii, for all my listening audience on the mainland over here with me. And now, Peter, could you give people a little information? You just are following conspiracy theories, alien contact, Area 51, S4 aliens with Ronald Garner, or C. Ronald Garner, a producer out of California. So now we're going to slip into working with you, and Janet is just delighted to find you, and I'm so looking forward to your story. So can you give us a little background on you and how you got interested in this extraterrestrial contact life? Janet and I are both ET contactees for your information, so you can take it from here if you don't mind.
Yep, that's awesome. I don't know really where to start, but I'll start back when I was younger. I've basically, my father was a police officer for 38 years. I come from a split-up family, but both parts of my family are fantastic and awesome, and they've been supportive in the later years with what's going on. But I was I'd done jobs as a baker and as a cleaner, and then I was a rap artist for a few years and brought out about 14 albums, which people can go and find at p-max.music.com. And so that's sort of just a quick overview of who I am, like what I've done with my life, but really everything's where I'm at now, which I'll get into now. So around the ages of between 8 and 12, when I was living with my mother and her partner and my brother, I would wake up from about a foot away from my head to this being. Now, people would call them greys, but this thing was more like an ashish white colour. So I'd sort of wake up and this thing would be about a foot away from my head, and all of a sudden I'll put the sheets up over me and turn the other way. Sometimes I'd notice like a white light going around the rim of the curtains. At other times when I was younger, I would see Kurt Cobain walk into my room, and it would be like it was vibrating between Kurt Cobain, who was the singer of Nirvana, who was dead at that time and I didn't know, and this grey being also, because I didn't mind that music and I was into it, but I didn't know that Kurt Cobain was dead at that time. It was just because I was listening to that music because of my brother, so I wasn't, into much news and that type of thing. Now, around 12 years old, I moved to my father's place, and he lived just off Dick Road in Albury, which is in Lavington, which is in Albury, New South Wales, Australia. And there was one day in the afternoon in the summer of 1995 when I was 12, and I was going down to the servo to go and get one of them, I think you guys call them like a slush puppy or something, like the really icy cold drinks. And as I went to go to walk down to the servo, which is at the corner of Dick Road and on a highway, which is one of the main highways here in Australia, I saw a craft which, the only way I can describe it is when you do your weights, when you go to the gym, if you got a weight at the end of the bar and put it on its side, that's what this thing looked like, but it was like a dark matte grey, and it would have been around, like, to this day, I'd still say it had to have been around the size of about 3 football fields, meaning Australian Aussie rule football fields, which are gigantic. I think they're like the American football fields, but if you can imagine that as a circle instead of like a big rectangle. From that time, I started to, on and off, have paranormal experiences, whether it was seeing shadow men, objects move, just what I term, and a few others do, is typical high strangeness activity. And then around 2004, I was actually on the way back from my mate's place to go home, and I had a few mates waiting at home, and there was this light in the sky over the next suburb to Lavington, which is Glenroy, and there was this object just doing crazy manoeuvres going up and down and just doing stuff that was totally unconventional and just really, really fast. 1 second it was at one place, the next second it was at another place, and I pulled over, another couple of cars had pulled up also. Me and my mate got out of the car and we're just looking at this thing going, you know, what is this? And I never, during those years, talked about anything. I just thought, because I was a bit of a hyperactive kid and I'm still a bit hypo, I just thought no one's going to believe me. And then a little bit later on after that, I started to conduct paranormal investigations and take UFO reports, because I was basically the only person between Melbourne and Sydney that I knew of that was doing, that was going to do that type of thing. There was groups in Melbourne, there was groups in Sydney, but there was no one for people like myself in between in the rural areas. So I started to conduct paranormal investigations. I've done some of the most haunted places in Australia. And then in late 2010, or in October of 2010, I think it was on the 10th of October 2010, if I've got my dates correct, I started to have sightings, and it was with a friend as well, and I had 6 sightings. Actually, I had 5 sightings in 2 weeks, but there were 6 sightings all up. My friend had seen a craft when I was in the shower one night, and he's told me to come out and see it. He's knocking on the door, come outside and see this, you know, and I'm just like, tell him just to pay off because I'm having a shower. We had that much activity in 2 weeks that it just blew me away, and by the end of it, I was just sort of like, whatever. And then 2011, I started to, and mind you, what I'm talking about and relating with those sightings in 2010, I filmed a couple of those sightings, and it was actually around Australia on Prime News, which is a prime-time news station here. Now, the local news had covered that, and I just thought it was for the local area, but later I found out, because I had people in the military contact me, they said that this news clip was taken by other news stations to play around the Christmas time, so it ended up being played around the country, and a lot of people got in contact with me. 2011 was when it started to get a little bit more trippy. Now, I was seeing orbs in the house, getting weird activity, but I knew when to go outside and see crafts during the day and at night. So I know what that is now, which I call thought transfer. It's where they basically, their thought is telepathy, but I just call it thought transfer. It's whatever thought concept they've got, they can just put in your mind, you think it's your own thought. So, and I've got some photos, a lot of photos actually. You can go to petermaxwellslattery.com and see, and videos, even recent video. This day last week, I was at Westall Park where in 1966, 200 students and school teachers. There's a documentary called Westall 66. It's one of the biggest UFO, if not the biggest UFO event that's ever happened in Australia, and I think a lot more people need to know around the world, where 200 students and teachers witnessed 2 crafts come and land and take off at the Westall School in 1966, and then the government came in and basically told everyone to shut up. There's many witnesses that talk on the documentary, but I was at the park. They've actually got a UFO park where they've got a UFO playground. And I did a CE5 event there the night before because that's what I do on and off. And the next day I was going to a barbecue with a talk group, which is a Truth Awakening Limitless Knowledge. It's a group here in Australia, and they have support for experiences. And I've just moved to Melbourne, and I was at the barbecue there with them, and I noticed this craft in the sky, and then I filmed it, and it was there for 15 minutes and sat and, it was sitting still, and then it moved and went back on itself, and we got 2 cameras on it. But this is going on right now, but like me noticing that craft, the thought transfer component going back to 2011 now, what happened was I was wondering, why is it that every time I go outside and I know I'm going to see something in the sky, it's there? So that was sort of where it was a reality check for me later on, going, they're putting this thought in my head because there's no other way. And then it got a little bit more trippier from there. So have you got any questions at this point?
No, you're doing a great job, Janet. What about you?
I eventually want to get to, I know where we're going. Yeah, this is good background. So you're having this telepathic communication to go outside. That's happened to me and other people. So go ahead, continue. You're doing a great job.
Yeah. Thank you. Well, the activity picked up in terms of high strangeness. Electrical equipment will play up around me. We even got video of that on the weekend of electrical equipment just going haywire around me. But it got to the summer of 2011, and I think it was the 14th of December, if I'm correct. And mind you, I'm just trying to ram this in as tight as I can because I've done 5 books, but 4 of my books are on my experiences, so I'm just trying to go through it the best that I can. But it was a very hot summer day here in Australia, and I had the aircon on, and I'm chilling in my lounge room, and all of a sudden, blinks in. The only way I can describe it, for all intents and purposes, is a liquid blue light beam. It's sort of between a aqua and turquoise sky blue. It's really hard to describe. One of the things I can say is if anyone's seen that movie Knowingness, I think with Nicolas Cage, I saw it last year and I was like, this is probably one of the closest depictions I can come to of it. There's these beings at the end that they originally appear human, which comes into this a little bit later. They've got hair, eyes, nose.
That was definitely a real scene, with Nicolas Cage. So I have to go watch that movie again. But we've heard 2 or 3 people say, did you see the beings of Noe? So I have to go watch that
exactly.
again.
Yeah, your friend Jim, right? Go ahead.
Yeah.
And I mentioned
go ahead.
Sorry, girl.
Back to you. Go ahead.
Yep.
Yeah,
Sorry.
go ahead.
In the movie, you can sort of see a brain and that sort of thing, but in this, like, these dudes are just completely a liquid blue light. There's sort of like spinning swirl of light in there. There's eyes, there's ears, there's nose, mouth, even hair, the short hair, but it's all a liquid blue light. You can sort of see definition. It's not like they've actually got hair or eyes. They're projecting that image. Now, this thing is phased in, like completely phased in for, I'd say, 40 seconds, and then it just cut out like a frame was cut out of a movie. I was taken aback, I can tell you that now, but I had this overwhelming feeling of just bliss, like it was like as if I had ecstasy. I was just really blissed out. And I was sort of just not with it for some time, but when it got to the 1st of 1st of January 2012 was where the activity really started, and I was really down because of that experience in mid-December with the what I call the blue light being, and I later found out to be it's one being of a race called the Elohim, and they're not angels or God, but they're a race of beings. That's what this being called itself, and I actually talked to Stan Romanek about this later on before he'd gone public with this. And it was just coincidentally I contacted him and he had similar stuff going on. But what was weird was that I had, on the 1st of January 2012, I was really upset with what was going on because my whole life had changed. I was actually working for an accountancy firm at the time, doing a business management Cert 3 certificate, and everything was going to crap. Now, I ended up finishing the certificate and everything else, but my life, my direction, my purpose, and my just everything, my whole world was just changing. But it was around 7 p.m. in the afternoon, and the sun was still up till about 9:30 here in Australia in summer, so it was still hot, very bright and sunny. And I was sitting on the couch, and a lady appeared bending over the coffee table with her eyes looking straight into my eyes. Now, her eyes were about 2 to 3 times the size of our eyes, like normal human eyes, and they had the white bit in the background and then the pupil, and her eyes were blue with the blue bit. And she had this wavy blonde hair. Now, from her neck down was sort of like a skivvy wetsuit type material top, and she had pants on as well. Now, from the shoulders up it was black, but from the shoulders down on the body and the pants, there was triangles, squares, circles, different shapes, even rectangles. There was different shapes, and there was they were red, yellow, blue, and black. And it was sort of like they were overstitched on this material, but I didn't touch the material. Later she has touched me, and it was like a cool feeling. Now, later I found out this being is from the Pleiades, and she's actually a light being, and that she was projecting that image to me, which is very funny about the Knowing movie, because the beings in the end, they're light beings, but they appeared as human. I understand now that she was doing this so I could handle in the body computer mind interacting with her. And from when I was young, I used to tell Mum that my mum wasn't my mum, and that my family wasn't my family, and that I wasn't from here. And then I used to hear a lady's voice in my head. Now, this being communicated to me with this lady's voice, and it was not telepathy. It was done by telepathy. She didn't move her mouth, but it wasn't normal telepathy. Now, what I mean by that is, and I've come across a few other experiences that I had this, she actually spoke in a neutral English voice, not with her mouth. And it was like as if from her mind there was a microphone, and in my brain, in the middle of my brain, was a speaker, and this voice vibrated out from in the middle of my head to my ears, and I could hear it slightly in my ears, but it was more in my head as a vibration. Later in time, and with her and the other beings, it's been direct telepathy, but what I understand now is because it was too much for me, this is how she had to communicate, so I had some understanding. It was just, I couldn't believe what was going on. Now, this lady in time communicated to me that, well, she's not even a lady, she's not a she or a he, she's a light being, it just is, that she's a being from the star Merope in the Pleiades. So she's from an actual star that's very young. I don't know how far in the future, or if she's there right now. I don't know how this works, because it's not your typical thing. And I understand that she's a star gatekeeper, and that the star and some other stars are actual star gates. They're actually portals. How this works, I do not have a concept or idea at the moment. The communications continue today. There's so much I could go into just with the communication side of things there. From there, the experiences have progressed. I've had experiences with, I've got past life memory also of being in the Pleiades as an actual human, not the type of being that I'm communicating to you about now, and also being in Orion and Sirius. I can distinctly remember some details which I can go into a little bit later. The other beings that I've interacted with are the Elohim, which I touched over, but what happened later on was there was a time I was at home, and I was taken to a crystal cave. Now, there was no entrance, there was no exit, and now I surmise that this crystal cave was actually a craft. And if you can imagine, I don't know if it was quartz or whatever, but just say for all intents and purposes that you were in a cave and the floor was quartz crystal, and the whole cave was like a dome, and it was also quartz crystal. If you can imagine a light, or a yellowish white light pulsating within the crystal, that's like the place where I appeared, and there was 12 of these Elohim. There was one experience where they projected a Earth that was in motion, slowly spinning, and all of a sudden a white light came out of the equator, and it became one with us, and I was back at home. There was a later experience where I was on my couch at home, and half of my lounge room turned into this crystal cave, and they started projecting the beings that I work with, who they are, my contract that I signed with them, and a whole lot of other information, which is very similar to, funny enough, Dan Burrish, but it's not exactly the same, but it does go into how some of the greys that we're interacting with are us in the future, and that some of the beings that are Nordic from the Pleiades and also from Orion are us in the future coming back interacting with us, but that they went to and connected with other Orion humans and other Pleiadian humans in the future after some events here. Now, talking to Alfred Weber, as I said to him, and talking to others, even though they've showed me, the beings have showed me that we've altered what happens in the future, what happens in the future on that other timeline still happens. So it's like there's still a good future and still a bad future, but I think what's happening now is it's create your own reality time, and it's up to you which timeline you're on. I don't know how else it works.
Let's talk about that, because that's very profound. And that's similar to what I'm getting, that we are the chooser, and that's my first, but one of my earliest experiences when I was 4 years old, when I was taken on, I called a mothership, I was shown 24 possible future histories, they called them, or timelines or multiverses, and what they showed me very clearly, they were mass destruction, like the whole planet was blown up into bits. From that paradigm all the way to 3 or 4 utopian paradigms, and then in the middle there were various levels of destruction. And so they said to me after they showed me the 24 different future histories, what do you choose? And so I realized I was the chooser of where I could be along, and that was just 24 possible options. There were endless variations on the theme that I could choose. And so there was one utopian that I chose. So somehow with all this programming out there in the media and the governments, whoever they are, the powers that be, our reality keeps getting hijacked because we are here and we have our belief systems. But I have to keep fine-tuning my course so I can go back to the utopian outcome. And I'm having ongoing contact as well. My contact's a little bit different. I don't really have a voice. What it is it's whole concepts. It's beyond voice.
Yeah, that's how it is now. It was only during those first few contacts that it was like that. But it's exactly what you're describing now is exactly what it is for me, but it was only the first couple of times was it like that with the voice.
Uh-huh. And it's almost like you had to learn how to go from one method to the other. TJ, you've had contact. What is your contact? How do they communicate with you?
Well, since I was, all right, for the listening audience and to educate Peter Maxwell Slattery as to who I am, I go by Teresa J. Thurman Morris, and my contact's been in several ways. And so for those listening, I actually saw my first people as a child. And I visually understand. I can't remember what I saw, Janet, but you and I have that on some of our history. But I don't remember, but I do know his name was, it was a boy, his name was Cleo. He was a small being that educated me, and he did teach me how to levitate blocks and also to speak to him with my mind. Then, of course, I saw the people that came in the, on Glinda, the Good Witch and Wizard of Oz, or like the crop circle, the little orbs, that came in orbs. So they came down, and then I would say that they did maybe have something like a visual, like you're talking about, the knowing, is the best thing I can think of, is the energy people. I don't know what they're called. So some people call them crystal people because they can see like a different color. I've heard blue, pink, purple. Mine were light blue like his. So the contact was just a knowing. So I don't know if we want to start saying they're the knowing people too. It's a knowing inside you, Janet. Then later when I go over at 8 years old, I see the angel people, right? And they didn't have wings. They were just beings over my head consciously. And then from there I go to Roswell, Peter, and I have beings that are like, I compare them to Alison Clark's visit on Taken with Steven Spielberg. And they came over in a UFO spacecraft, silver, not shiny, just silver. And we call them 30 feet by 30 by 30. But a small, like GUS, which we call a Galaxy Universal Shuttle, we use an acronym called GUS. So I saw them, and they look like normal human beings, and so they're human. And then Grays later, much later, in my military career, and we called one, well, we had names that I reported in Washington, D.C., and on paper when I was in touch with Ruth Montgomery, and they were the Grays. And then my husband and I got together, and we both discussed the Grays. And then when I went over to Mexico, the Grays were the small 3 to 4 feet Grays, and they're the ones we were talking about earlier with Ron Turner. And then, so I call them the whites, they're the normal. And then Tom and I have discussed like like a lighter pink or a pale blue, something like that are humans, and they're humanoids. So, but as far as contact physically on the planet, I've walked with people. They came at midnight in 3D form, physical form, and I was not told to tell anybody. Then when I had I lost a baby, and a guy came to me, remember Janet, a human. So they come to me as humans. And he could use ESP and his voice box just like a human. But he didn't have a lot of emotions. It was more like a Spock-like, I want to have a baby with you. I mean, what guy says that? I want to have a baby with you. So in physical form with your voice, or it comes in my mind. And then I still have contact, and then I have the other world contact that Janet and I are trying to compare our notes and find other ET contactees that have like quantum jumps, Peter, or, that you can know other dimensions, other universes, be here now, but have some kind of deja vu, like you have maybe another parallel universe, unproven. And then Janet and I have talked to people in our dreams at ESP and lucid dreaming. So we're just starting to categorize this with people all over. So I totally believe that we are more than just our physical body, mind, spirit, and that we're all now finding the pieces of the puzzle in each other and comparing as ET contactees. So I think it's time we start categorizing all these various ways that we are communicating with beings, not necessarily walking on the planet, though some are. Many types come and go. Is that what you understand, Peter? They come and go from time to time?
Exactly. Everything that you're talking about, I've experienced. Everything you've just said, I've experienced. And that's the thing. It's getting back in contact with our nature while in this body computer, which is multi-dimensional beings. We are multi-dimensional beings in our pure state, but also what's special, what I understand about the body computer, the human body computer, is it's more multi-dimensional in the physical realm than most other body computers as well. So this is where, being in the human body, we can do many things that other beings can't, and it's because we're a mixture of many other beings from many other vibrations, which people could say are dimensions. It's up to them what they want to term that. But this is where it starts going into the core of things, like you've just said, is getting, going into those types of things that a lot of people and researchers don't want to go into. But now everyone's starting to have to go there because there's no other way you can do it. Now quantum mechanics and superstring theory and everything's starting to touch on these things.
Right. They're finding the words and the ways to speak to people like Janet and you and me, and we're coming forth going, it's time we start, researching not just the UFOs and the physical vehicles, whether they've got weapons or not, and we know they do, but the people that are actually in contact that have always, and it's no different to me than people that were trying to tell people that were coming and going from the planet in the ancient scriptures, if people want to study ancient wisdoms. And the New Thought teaching is what we're teaching them. We call it the Old Walk and the New Walk on our Sunday shows with Ascension Center and Ace Metaphysical Institute. And you're right, we are crossing over into particle physics, quantum physics, and cosmology. And there's a lot of television shows. And then Janet and I always enjoy talking and discussing how all this intelligence and knowledge is coming into movie industries. And the scariest one I ever saw was Alien and then War of the Worlds. And then we grew up on, Twilight Zone, Outer Limits, Space, whatever it was, Robbins, that one.
Let's go back to Peter's story because we're going to be running out of time here.
Sure, we can have Peter back.
What I wanted for the next part is, what is the message, Peter? Can you tell us you've been interacting with various beings, and which beings you've interacted, and what kind of message are they telling you about what's going on and what's going to happen, the message?
This is very multi-layered. Now, for example, there was an experience I had with reptilians, and it was not a bad experience at all, though I have had two other experiences with different reptilians, and they weren't so good. And I don't see things in the universe as bad or good, but rather in service or self-service mode. Mary Rodwell, who's a great friend of mine, I talked to her one day, and she even said it on the show that I've got, that basically words to the effect of, look, if you've got a parasitic weed and it's the only way it can live and the only way it knows to survive is to basically suck the energy off the trunk of a tree, is this parasitic weed really that bad if that's all it knows how to exist? So in other words, it has to do what it does to survive. Is that so bad for it, just for it to survive? Now, in saying that, with the reptilians, the Earth ones that took me, and it was later revealed to me that it was through this experience with the Elohim when they projected all this stuff to me, they were saying to me that they're not all bad and that they want ascension too. And with this came knowledge, and later on even more knowledge, that they can't evolve any more than they have because of the vibration that they're at and the way they're going. Now, in saying that, I've later learnt that the reptilians aren't even bad. They're actually being possessed by archons, basically the opposite, the beings that were once the Elohim. You could say fallen ones. I don't like to put religious texts into it, but you can term it how you want to. And that they're basically overshadowing or possessing the reptilians, and that everyone thinks, the reptilians are doing this, doing that, when really the reptilians are just a vehicle, like how we get possessed. But because things are coming to a halt now, and almost this Archon network, as I like to call it, they're pulling every tool out of the box, they're actually skipping the reptilians and instead of possessing them, and actually going directly to the humans, which is why a lot, just an example, people with their family and loved ones that have experiences like us get stuff said to them that is not the nature of the person who's saying it. They say things that they normally wouldn't say. We're being psychically attacked and attacked in many other ways, and there's no use buying into it. It's just being aware of it. So that's one thing with the reptilians, is that they said they can't evolve too, but they've allowed that to happen, and in saying that, the human race has allowed what's happened to happen also on another level, because I do understand from the experiences and the downloads I've had and visions I've had from the being I call Shiji, which is the female from the Pleiades, which is really a light being, that we're the fourth civilization now, and that we've had our abilities each time, but it's when we lost the oneness that the civilizations have declined. You could even look at this at the Tower of Babel or whatever in the Bibles, where they talk about once they all understood each other, but then when they wanted kings, queens and everything else, which is a hierarchy structure, which is a reptilian structure, which is really Archon structure, everything went to crap. So this is one thing that I can go into. With the Elohim...
About who are the Archons, who and what are Archons, because our listeners may not be aware of that term.
Well, there's different vibrations of them and different types of them. There's some that look human, there's some that look like deformed fetuses, there's some that are like shadow, shape-shifting type entities. The best example I can give you, and I've experienced different types of them, and I've even got a photo of one type on my website, which is like a deformed fetus with all these weird orbs and stuff, and it's just floating in midair. The best description I can sort of give to you, like a layman's way to go about it, is that the jinn, or go to the Quran and they describe basically 6 different types of demonic type things, but the jinn, and then you've got 6 types of angelic type of beings. So they're basically, some people would call them demons. Again, it's up to you what terminology you like to put on it. I just like to call a spade, and I just call them the Archons, and there's different vibrations of them. Just like humans, one knows all the different vibrations.
There's good and bad Archons, like there's good and bad people, is the way I understand. They're vibration spirits. Is that sort of what you understand?
Yeah,
they're thought transference. Whether they're good or bad, if you get another thought that you feel outside of yourself, if you're into the alien ET UFO community, then you probably are going, oh, God, is that an archonic thought? Is that a good thought or a bad thought? Is it my thought, or is it coming from outside of me? And if it is, then you're wondering, oh, my God, I'm getting archon. I'm getting archon, you know, like argon, but archon. But, yeah, I've heard that many times, and Janet and I have had it, and in Aldebaran as well. But, yeah, I agree. You can't say that all grays are bad or all whites or Nordics are bad or good. And you can't say all humans. All you have to do, logical, is look at people around you, and they're all human like you. So we need to start categorizing, and, you know, we just say archons and we say Aldebaran, and then a lot of your people out there that are teaching on YouTube, and you can think of many famous people. They shouldn't say they're all good or bad because they really don't know unless you put a couple of archons in your room or something, right? Good bad.
The issue of session, because if somebody comes in and takes you over and then you kind of have an excuse, well, I didn't do it, the archons did, right? So we're looking at
a demon or whatever.
Let's just say, well, let's deal with the negative or self-serving beings instead of, have the paradigm service to self and service to other, right? So when we get taken over by self-serving beings, and Thoth talked about this in the Emerald Tablets of Thoth, thousands of years ago. He said that they were sneaking into the council and taking over the council members, and then the council members were doing heinous things like murder, and, so they had an excuse. The person being taken over, is it just activating that negative part of themselves and realizing that all beings probably have light and dark within them and good and evil? So is that something that they're creating together? They're inviting in this negative archon, so they're acting out this negative part of themselves, or do they truly get taken over and they can't help themselves? Peter, what do you think about that? What's your opinion?
I think it's all perceived by how the spirit, the being, the person wants to perceive it. Now, just from experience, I know that when I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, things are all sweet, but every now and then there'll be a spanner thrown in the works just to try and put you off track because they don't want you doing what you're doing. I think sometimes I think everyone's got a little bit of light and a little bit of dark in them. I agree with that sort of thing, but I don't think you can sort of blame everything unless a person is being overshadowed or possessed. You can't say it's another facet of the person. But then again, if you look at the true nature of reality from what I've experienced, I'm you, you're me. So really, when you do bad to me or I do bad to you, we're actually doing bad to each other if you want to go that technical and that deep. Now, when getting into all this, what I do understand is with this shift now there's people go on about the shift, this and that. It is that multi-layered, and it's not going to happen or has happened the way people think from what I understand. Now, there is an upgrading of humanity, sort of taking humanity to the next level, spiritually evolving in the body computer, that we've all lived lives on other planets and other dimensions and other realms, and we're actually living past, present, and future lives, extraterrestrial, all here, all at the same time. But what's going on is with this shift, we're actually dragging this network, the Archon network, and us. And this is the thing, I used to think that this shift and what's going on was just for humanity. It is for all beings throughout all planes within what I call source, throughout all vibrations. And there's a bit of a hiccup in the reincarnation and evolution process, not just of humanity, but of the universe, because of what's happening here on Earth and some other planets, in terms of people come here, and with the programming and the Archon network, people are being recycled, or spirits are being recycled here. People think they've got karma when you can break karma as quick as you created it by thought. And that there has been stopping the evolution process. Now, when this shift happens, which some of it already has, we're actually dragging these Archons and making them realise you don't need us as an energy. You don't need to put us in a box to survive. And in doing so, you've limited yourselves and your evolution. So this is just some of the other stuff that I'm touching on now of the information that I've got, but this shift is for all beings throughout all planes.
Wow, fascinating. TJ, do you have any comments? Are you there?
Can you hear me now?
Hello? Now I can hear you when you're on mute. Go ahead, TJ. Do you have any comments on what Peter just said?
Can you hear me now, Janet? Hello?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Apologize. I don't know what was going on. Now, what was the question? Because I was trying. I don't know why I got cut off, but now that I'm back, what was the question? I was talking to you, but you couldn't hear me.
Yeah. Did you hear what Peter said? You didn't hear what Peter said. Peter, can you kind of summarize it? That was brilliant, and I just wanted. I felt you disconnect, TJ. I was going, where's TJ? Okay.
Weird.
Summarize that again, and get what you said, Peter, about the archons and all that stuff.
Yeah. Well, with the archons, they're evolving too. So with this shit that's going on now, we're actually dragging them through, and we're making them realise that they've limited themselves in what they can do by putting us in the box and using us, as people say, for energy, however they want to term it. So this shift, and this is the thing that I didn't understand until later, is I used to think this shift was for humanity, but it's for all beings throughout all planes and dimensions. And because of the reincarnation process and how we go and live lives in other planets and all other dimensions, and even here on Earth, all at the exact same time, is sort of screwed the evolution process of us as a collective, as a universe, as Source itself, with what's going on, which is people like being reincarnated back here, and a lot of this has got to do because they've created karma, but they don't realise they can break that karma as quick as they created it, because the karma in itself is an illusion. So this is where the shift in consciousness is not just for humanity, it's for everyone, and that was a really big, profound moment for me when I started to understand that, and that was at the end of it would have been around late 2012 I started to understand this, and I wrote about that in my book Operation Starseed, because I thought that the operation was here for humanity. Then I realised this was not just a galactic thing, it was a universal thing, and it was bigger than I could ever imagine.
And I got that as well, that this shift is for the total continuum, and we think it's here just for Earth and humanity, but it's actually happening for all of creation. That's why it's this, the cycle within the cycle within the cycle. It's a Kali Yuga within the larger yugas, and I forget the length, 26,000-year cycle within a I don't know what it was, 368,000 or 450,000-year cycle. So this is the culmination of all the cycles as we come around into this complete rotation, and so it's an upgrade for everybody, a chance to shift wherever you want to go. And you ultimately remain the chooser, but it's also going to happen regardless. So, TJ, what do you think of all that?
Pretty much agree with what you're both saying. Actually, I didn't have anything that didn't resonate with me. I think we're each searching for our own souls of value, and I understand we're pretty much in the guiding seat. I do believe we're connected to various levels, whether they're ourselves, our higher consciousness, archons, Aldebaranis, Andromedans, or whoever in this galaxy. That's galaxy-level existence. But I also believe what I'm told from my higher source or my connections at various levels. If the ETs come and visit me in spacecraft, I believe them. If they come at midnight or come in human form, like, where'd you come from, I believe them too. The reason is they're not in my normal 3D reality, so they pretty much grab my attention. Now, in dreams, virtual reality, I listen to them, but in my dreams, I know I'm dreaming, but I do get intel from that. And then when I'm, lucid dreaming, I go to other, like Aeon Flux, the movie, and I have learned to incorporate a lot of my instructions. But I would like to know if Peter, just for my own personal information, subscribes to some of the old levels. Like I was informed for many years of the levels of universes: universe, multiverse, metaverse, xenoverse, and omniverse. But in the last few years, since 2007, I gained alphaverse and omegaverse, even though they used terms I would understand, an alpha and a Greek symbol, and I realized there'll be controversy of that on the planet from people that study language, etymology and epistemology. I understand that, but I don't know any other way. And those that I've come to be known here on the planet to understand, people that are researchers, which I haven't been into. I'm just coming to find people that I can connect with as Janet and you, Peter, is we're all ET contactees in one form or another. It just depends. Are we all simulations, or are we all just gathering other parts of us in various prior pre-existence, living billions of years, and just doing it again? And I write for UFO Digest, Peter, and one of the guys, said, well, what are we doing if it was, because he thinks reincarnation's insanity. Why would you want to do something over and over again? But I would think that ascension's about always finding that part of you that maybe wants some kind of something else in the universe to connect to and to understand. So maybe how many times we come back here, but is this a 3D reality compared to archons that have no 3D? Does that make any sense?
It does, but it depends on how you look at it. Like, I was shown leaving Source and how this universe alone was created, and that the reason why we left. I'll describe to you what I saw. And what I saw was this. It was like a huge orb, and half of it exploded into zillions and zillions and zillions of spirits. At the same time, the other half of it created like a field, you could say like a circle, and it was what we call Source. Now, through it was all these different vibrations, and the spirits that was created, those zillions and zillions of parts that were split off from it, their job was to go out through all planes and all dimensions in between, and to go and experience life and gain knowledge differently from one another. That's what my understanding is. Why? I don't have a clue, because I know that it was in a loving state before it and it knew nothing. So this, to me, is the first time it's done what it's done, and one day it will suck back in on itself and have its own cycle as a universe. So there's many planes and dimensions.
I'm sorry, go ahead, and I'll tell you what I understand.
The other thing is, too, I was shown the blueprint of this universe, and then I was also taken outside this universe and shown other universes. So within this one universe, I don't know how many dimensions or vibrations there are, which other people would say dimensions, but I saw a hell of a lot, but I saw the blueprint to it. When I was taken outside the universe, I saw countless numbers of other universes, and the trippy thing was that was inside something else. And I had to stop there because it done me head in. Okay, now,
I had a conversation with a gentleman today that is like a partner or associate in another business, and he and I didn't know we never discussed cosmology or conspiracy theories or anything. You just don't do that with people you work in the everyday work environment. But he brought up, did I understand, he watched Nova on Sunday, Nova television show, which, I see occasionally on UFO, what is it called, YouTube, or my Netflix account, because I don't have TV, but I have computers. But he said, do you understand communication in 010101? Do you know what that means? I went, of course, it's communication code. And so what I'm hearing you say, when you were saying it, I was getting, in the beginning was the O and the 1, because everything comes back to in the beginning was nothing or whatever. But you have a minus 0, and you have a minus 1, and you have a positive 1, but everything that we're getting in our computer world is binary code, 010101. Mm-hmm. So you're talking about in the beginning with the split, which Janet and I go back and talk about that a lot too. So I'm wondering if everybody is the awakening is about understanding how we communicate all the way back to the original O versus 010101 or negative 010101, right? You understand what I'm saying? It's just another way to say the same thing.
Yeah. It is. And it's like this, to tell you the truth, like I've described to people. When I explain those zillions of spirits that split off from Source and it's still within Source, you think about the human body just as one example. We've got, I don't know how many million or billions, I'm not sure, of cells. When you look at your hand is made up of all these tiny microscopic cells. But yet, when you put them all together, it makes your human body. So if you can imagine the human body as God or Source, and then all the little cells are each one of our little spirits, you start to put things into another concept, that all of us together and all the vibration and what we think is nothingness, even though we only see 0.005% of physical matter, everything together is a cell, and when you join it all together, you've got Source. And then, from my understanding now, like I said, I went outside the universe. I saw other universes, and if they're made up the same way, which I think they are, and they're inside something else, what is the bigger things we're a part of. But like anything, you have to do baby steps and understand this little part to get to the next part. Just like with some of my experiences, they've lied to me, but they've lied to me to give me a greater concept to understand the true reality of other things later on, because if they did it straight up, I just would not understand it. Like my Pleiadian contactee, she said I'm from the Pleiades, but when she said that, I asked her where from, and she said I wouldn't understand. And no wonder, because later on she said that she's from an actual star, not a planet, and that would have done my head in. And even now it a little does me head in, because I just don't understand it, although I do understand how it's possible on a multi-dimensional vibration reality, if you can understand what I'm saying.
I actually had a being come see me in code and symbols, and that's recorded on UFO Digest too. We're about out of time, and Janet, I think one of the guys from St. Louis, that Jim is on here, but when I couldn't, I tried to put him on, but maybe Peter could come be on one of our panels in the future, because I think he could handle it, if you know what I mean.
We'd love back. Just fascinating what's coming to you, and we are putting together the pieces of the puzzle by having different people on these panels. So I'll send you an email, but we'd love to have you back if you ever want to come back, Peter.
Yeah, that would be absolutely fantastic, and it's been awesome chatting to both of you ladies, and thank you so much for having me on.
Right. Any final words for our listeners? How can people contact you, your website and everything?
Yeah, just go to petermaxwellslattery.com. I think there will probably be a link or something at your website, at Aquarian Radio. There you've got books. There's free shows that you can download, either the audio or you can watch the shows too. There's lots of the footage that I've taken up until recently, lots of photos and other things. So just feel free to go to the website and browse around. And you know, if you want to email me, just email me. Feel free to.
Now, how do we email you? We usually ask people to put that on the website.
They can go to they can go to the contact page on my website, or they can just go to ift@live.com.au, and they'll get directly to. That's my direct email to myself. So, any questions, I try to answer as quickly as I can, because I get them all the time. I'd rather just get things done over and just help people on their merry way get to where they've got to go. And also do guide sessions where I bring people's guides in and that type of thing, along with contact work here in Australia, where I take people out and we basically do CE5, but it's slightly a little different, which there's lots of footage up there and testimony from witnesses that have had experiences with myself and at those events as well.
Yes, I'd like to make contact with you. And Janet, if you don't mind, we've got 90 seconds, Janet.
Okay,
but
we're almost
out
of time. CJ, last word.
Oh, I do. I was going to give. I just wanted to say, everyone, if you have had any contact or you feel like we've said anything, please get in contact with Janet or I. Mine's tjmarset@gmail.com, and Janet is aquarianradio@gmail.com. So that's tjmarset@gmail.com. Please email me. And Janet is aquarianradio@gmail. We use Gmail. That's our go-to. And that's the same thing, Peter. Get in touch with us, and I would like to put you on a panel. We have various levels of intelligence or understanding for various people. And like I said, I think the gentleman from St. Louis is here, Janet, that wants to put a panel together. And I think Peter would be a good choice for that panel of universal intelligence panel coming up soon.
Excellent.
Back to you, Janet.
All right, we will talk. We've got just a few seconds left, but thank you so much, everybody, for joining us.